Okay, Cup of Chi, episode 30 something. I can't even remember where I am, but it's in the late 30s. And here with a good friend of mine, Jonathan Shubs. He's been on quite a few of the podcasts, so you can check back on the library. We've had lots of conversations over the last 5 years, and he is exclusively a teacher of many styles of acupuncture, has trained with Dr. Richard Tan, who I think a lot of people watching this know who he was and how important his role in sharing acupuncture. He's also the author of two books, which are in my personal library. Sun's Season of Channels, that's the first one, and then Sun's Dance of the Channels. Get them. They're easy to read and they're easy to understand. And it doesn't matter if you're advanced or a lay person or even just interested in acupuncture. It's important because, especially this one, I remember a student of mine who gave it to his 13-year-old daughter and she read it and she understood it. That's how well it's written. So get on the that's the blatant plug for Jonathan. Um, he'll be here with us in Ireland. He likes coming to Ireland for some strange reason, but that's all good. He was already here this year with myself and a friend and my son, and we had a good time. So we are getting back on the bandwagon. We're kicking off in November. We'll be in a building called Brew Columbanus in Cork City, and we're looking at Nanjing, applied Nanjing acupuncture. Um, and there's a few questions I have because obviously
hmm
it was new to me, and it's probably new to a lot of some people. Last time you were here, we were in Mullingar, and it was really interesting because we had some people who understood the concepts already. We had some people who had done Sa'am, which is a
hmm
similar system, not the same, but similar. And we had a lady who'd never done any acupuncture, but could actually still use the system applying essential oils to the points and getting the same results. So I think that was fascinating that proves how well this system works. So why would a postgrad
hmm
want to study this, whether they're 3 months postgrad or whether they're 30 years postgrad? Why would they want to start with the system? What's the benefits of it?
Okay, so maybe before we get to the benefits, we should just actually talk about what the system is to give a little bit of context. So it's called the Applied Nanjing because the Nanjing, there are a couple of chapters that specifically talk about the interactions of the five elements. Now, most all acupuncturists in acupuncture college have studied something about the five elements. We understand them from their categorical perspective, about the Shen cycle and the Ke cycle. Often it's used to describe diseases and how diseases or imbalances in the body present themselves. And yet, as a therapeutic tool, they're sort of left outside of the realm of treatment. So, the Applied Nanjing course takes the two chapters that talk about the five elements approach to treatment. So, using the Shen and the Ke cycle, the controlling and the generating cycle, and using them together. And there's another part of the Nanjing which talks about abdominal palpation. So this isn't the Japanese Hara diagnosis, which is much more complicated, much more complex. It's a very simplified diagnosis of the abdomen. So the course itself, the Applied Nanjing, is going to take the um, abdominal palpation to give us an idea of the inner picture of what's happening with the body. Then we're going to use the five element approach. So we are going to use the basic ideas of Sa'am, which is this system, but we're going to use it to respond to the information in the abdomen. So for those people who've studied with Dr. Tan before, he would always talk about how can you check efficacy of your treatment. Well, when we use the abdomen and we can see the changes directly after the insertion of the needles in the abdomen, we can check the efficacy. So those are two of the three main parts of the course. The other part is we're going to borrow from another course I give, the Sun's Dance of the Channels, which is the second book, Channel Interactions. So even if you haven't done that course, the course is still going to use that information. I'll present it in a way that is accessible to everyone, whether you have that information or not. If you do have the information, if you have used it, you'll probably have a little bit be able to get something a little bit quicker, but that's not a problem. So those three aspects of abdominal palpation, channel interactions, and then we choose which four needles are going to interact with the pattern that we see. It gives us a very simple few needles to treat very complex problems. The problems can range from pain to systemic pain, meaning places in more than one part of the body, to functional problems such as digestive problems, cardiovascular problems, respiratory problems, dermatitis, skin problems. And there's also a huge part of this course which I focus on emotional interactions, how to work with emotions and how to understand not only the emotion, but how we can support the body in flowing with the emotion for the emotion to be integrated.
Lovely.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, lovely. I mean, I can bear witness to its effects. You know,
Mm.
I think, I'm still getting a handle on it because I'm so busy. So I dip in and out. I will bring the posters with me for the course so that it can be
Right.
there for the people to use as a tool. But um, I can't remember exactly what was going on for me that day when you treated me, but other than obviously my son, we were doing a rite of passage that Jonathan's another part of his, should we say, his toolbox. So if you have friends, family, loved ones that want to go through a transformative or begin a transformative process, Jonathan will use this style of acupuncture to help. But I do remember thinking, and I've had some crazy treatments, 30 years
Mm.
involved in this kind of stuff. And it was really powerful. I was getting a lot of images and motion and feelings moving through the body. And I think it was a kidney point. I can't remember. I was so out of it. I'm
Mhm.
going to say kidney and maybe small intestine or I can't even remember what it was, but it was pretty powerful. And I remember a release afterwards, a feeling of letting go. And I do know that a lot of people that watch this know about you,
Mhm.
have read about you before, have seen you before, know that you have trained in trauma work, that have a qualification in compassionate inquiry, which is
Mhm.
a branch of Gabor Mate's work. So it's very interesting that because I know you've got a big brain, you've got this huge library of information in there, and you've managed to find those connections
Mhm.
between what you've figured out and then what you're learning and matching that. So could you maybe give a brief description of how you came about the diagnosis for me and then the treatment? I mean, obviously not giving away.
Yeah.
We want people to come to the course. We're not going to give away the secret. But
Well, if
what was the
yeah.
process?
So, also the context in which we were doing that treatment was very specific. We were doing rites of passage for your son.
Mm-hmm.
So we had already gone through, I think it was something like 24 hours of being in ceremony and being in an altered state. He went through his paces. We did some very powerful ceremonies and rites with him. And so this treatment was towards the end of that. It was one of the last things that we did. And the thought process behind it was how to integrate and help the steps that have happened for you throughout that process,
Mm.
um, to integrate them on a somatic level. So one of the benefits of the SAM approach, well, all of the acupuncture approaches I use, whether it be the I Ching or the SAM or anything else,
Yeah.
is if we've done some sort of therapeutic trauma work or emotional work, it often happens in the head, a little bit in the body. So the acupuncture brings it into the body. With you, if I remember correctly, the treatment was not necessarily a SAM approach, but it was my four gates approach.
Mm, mm.
And that's something that I do teach. Sometimes I give it in the SAM course, sometimes I give it in the I Ching course, sometimes I give it in both, depending on timing and how things move. And that was a specific, I was using what I call the ruler's gates to help connect to fire and water and the interaction between fire and water,
Mm, mm,
which is where you were.
mm.
And then we also did a treatment for your son earlier, which was a different treatment because he needed something different to support
Yes.
him.
Hmm.
So the use of of any acupuncture system after doing trauma work is highly beneficial. I've noticed a huge difference in integration. And that's another thing that I don't often talk about, but even if somebody has done some sort of rites of passage or a ceremony,
Mm,
some sort of psychedelic assisted journey or shamanic journey, yeah, doing especially the SAM approach and then focusing on what was the imagery that came up and what emotions are moving can really help that person to integrate it on a faster level because sometimes it can take months, even years to integrate something. And with this approach, you can start that integration process and accelerate it uh,
I
quicker.
want, I wanted to say something to you, and
Hmm.
it always happens when me and you do these things. But like as soon as we start to set that intention for a seminar, or
Hmm.
we decide we're going to go on a pathway, things arise for me as they do because
Yeah.
obviously that intention is set. But I had this lady come into me. I haven't seen her for 4 years. It's virtually 4 years nearly to the exact month,
Okay.
and uh, this lady has had a huge history of abuse,
Hmm.
both physical, mental, and sexual,
Hmm.
and including members of family attacking her, and then also work colleagues attacking her.
Hmm.
And um, when she came, it was like just that cusp of like COVID happening,
Hmm.
and then restriction in clinical work, and then she managed to kind of get through that phase and get straight back in as soon as we were able to practice. And it was really it was helping her. I think it was a case of taking her out of the woods and putting her into a clearing.
Hmm.
So we were in the clearing. The helicopter hadn't quite arrived to rescue us yet,
Hmm.
but we were somewhere safer than where she was. Don't ask me what happened. We haven't. She's only just come back to me, but uh, she said to me, she sat down and she said, "I have done so many types of therapy, talking, you name it." Like she listed a load of things, and she said, "I have absolutely nothing against any of these systems, but I know and I feel that it doesn't help.
Hmm.
It's not helping me. And I'm here because I know that the best I ever felt was coming for acupuncture. And so now what I'm learning is that gateway that you've started years ago,
Hmm.
because we've had this conversation, then that resonance implants onto me. And I mean, it's not that I haven't done this kind of work before, but it's very interesting. It's like when I was at college, we'd study maybe routines in between our for neck treatment or
Yeah.
routines in acupuncture for digestive problems. And that whole week in clinic, then all you'd have was digestive problems or neck pain, right? And it's great now because I know you'll be here in just over a month, and we can go through some of these case studies. And I know that I can just by being in the lecture, I can transpose that information of maybe I should try diagnosing through the stomach.
Yeah.
Maybe I should find, is there an imbalance there? And because I know you said to me before that what you like about this system is it allows those people that don't have the time or the inclination to study other types of internal medicine, for example, like herbal medicine or homeopathy, that you're giving them a gateway or a pathway that they can have as a tool that can help them for these internal, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, they have a gateway in. And I know it's much bigger
Mm,
than
yeah.
what I've just, you're not going to learn it all in 2 days, obviously, but it's going to give you a very practical, I mean, it's probably the most practical course I've seen you teach
Mhm.
in terms of they're all practical, but it's literally we're getting our hands on each other and,
Yeah.
feeling where the blockages are or where the information is being presented. Um, so I'm looking forward to getting back into that. And I've actually had some undergraduates and recent postgraduates reach out to me asking me, where does it come from? Like, where does it start from and how, why would it benefit? And I said, well, it's an application of Jonathan's experience
Mhm.
with previous, knowledge, which is all here, and then learning something like this applied method and finding that once you've studied this, there are connections through all acupuncture systems. It's not,
Yeah.
there's no separation. Um, you know, we live in a pretty standardized design,
Mhm.
pretty much, apart from, some people are very different, but we are pretty much in a standardized design. And when I started the Institute of Natural Medicine Ireland, I got a lot of flack and I got a lot of pushback and, who do you think you are? And, blah, 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 blah. And I just said, look, it's not about me trying to take over anything other than the slogan for me was developing outstanding practitioners. And I remember when we were training with Tan, and I know you spent a lot more time with him than I ever did, but he said like you could take an average acupuncturist and make them good,
Yeah.
no, and not decrying anything that the guys are studying the colleges. You need that basic foundation.
Mhm.
But any of the students have been with me, uh, it's beautiful to watch them develop themselves. So they're only getting the snapshot that I'm giving them, and when they're out there in practice, they go, "Oh, is it okay if I use this or that?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no rules. Do it."
Mhm.
And I think what you're bringing is not only the practical information, but the reason why that works. And often that's not taught at an undergraduate level. Uh,
No, it's true. Yeah.
and I'm not saying that's true for all
Mhm.
colleges, but
Mhm.
generally in my experience, which is a lot, and I've worked with a lot of different students from different colleges, and I think for me, we have to preserve this. The way we work now is, I think, we can we can work in a way that is understandable and relatable to where we are in our period of time. When we read those classics, it was relatable, I think, to where they were at in time, but also I think probably more relatable to people who are a little bit more of scholars. They had a higher level of education, and therefore it was. And I think sometimes there's a preservation of mystery and magic to
Yeah.
elevate oneself. When really the practical application of it is what's full, what's empty, what's excess, what's deficient, what's
Mm.
whatever you want to call it, vacuous.
Yeah.
Some people say vacuous. But I want people to understand that we're not just bringing you here to Ireland for the crack. We're bringing you here because it works. The
Yeah.
system works. It's applicable,
Yeah.
and it gives you options that you don't get from TCM necessarily.
Well, yeah, I think that's everything you said I agree with. from a historical point of view, one of the things that we don't necessarily recognize is acupuncture as our Chinese medicine as an approach. So we have our classic books. We have the Naijing, we have the Nanjing, and in these books, the medicine is presented as already a complete system. We also have to remember the time and place that these books were written in. They were written in a empirical vision of the world, which is very hierarchical. And so a lot of the metaphors that are used are going to be based on the political systems because who was, as you said before, it was scholarly, but who were the scholars who were able to advance in the administrative world of ancient empirical China? Well, they were the ones who would support the emperor. So the way in which they speak about Chinese medicine, they're going to use political references to reinstate the political paradigm that's there. And the other thing that they're going to do is they're going to look at their geography, they're going to look at their environment, and they're going to take their environment and use that as the explanation for the system. And it does work. It's not that it's misdirected. However, and this is my personal belief, for us as practitioners in the West who come from a different culture, we need to let go and not hold so tightly that those binds to time and place in which it was presented to find out the underlying framework in which it's there. And then, we can use the five elements, which is one of the underlying frameworks. The channel system themselves is an underlying framework, how the channels interact. These are the basic ideas that we can pull on, and then we can understand it from a, I would say, a more egalitarian, a more objective point of view and work with it. So that's one of the main points that I've been trying to promote and to teach and to talk about is there is much wisdom that's handed down from our ancient system, but there's also a lot of cultural, environmental, economic, and political influences that sometimes we don't even see. So that's one part of it. The other part is, you know, most colleges are going to teach TCM. That's the standardized version of Chinese medicine. That is what was, and that started its process over 100 years ago with the influence of Western medicine. Western medicine has been wonderful for certain things, but it's also wanted to change what Chinese medicine is. Because if we go back to Chinese medicine and we go back to where it started, it was an animistic medicine of the land, understanding how to be in relationship, how to be in egalitarian relationship to your surroundings. And those types of thought processes don't work with Western medicine. They don't work with our extreme capitalistic society and our need for going down to a basic root of a molecule or this is doing that. So Chinese medicine in the last 100 years has really been focused on that. And somebody like Dr. Tan was, in his way, trying to bring back a much older, truer version. And not to say TCM doesn't have its value points. But as you said before, when you're at the college and when you are doing digestive protocols, well, those digestive protocols are based on a script of this is what it is. And so it works, so we don't question it. And then I'm sure most practitioners can say, I've done the scripts, they work 70% of the time, and there's still that 30% I don't know where to go. And that's where something like the applied Nanjing comes in. to help you get past that barrier of what you've already learned.
I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the road or the journey that you had to take to discover this yourself?
Well, so when I was in acupuncture college, I had some very good TCM teachers. And I remember there was I remember sitting there hearing, this is that. And that was always something that was I'm always resistant to. I always look for nuance. I always look. And one of my teachers was a teacher who was interested in Japanese acupuncture. He had also studied with Dr. Tan. He had studied tongue acupuncture. He had studied with Stephen Birch. He was a curious person. And I did my internship with him. When I finished my acupuncture college, I reached out to him and I did my internship with him. So a lot of the idea of the sa'am, the four needles, he was the one who first showed it to me. And then I went on a journey to research it, finding every book I could find, and also being willing to take risks in my own clinic, saying, oh, if this happens, then this happens. Um, and being curious. And I would use palpation as my guide. So if I palpated a point and it wasn't active, even though that was the point that was supposed to be indicated, I'd say, well, if it's not active, let me find something else. So that has been my journey. Has been Daniel Daria was his name. He's a French practitioner here in Switzerland who was very curious, and he allowed me to express my curiosity. And then I went and studied with Dr. Tan. And even when I was studying with Dr. Tan, hold on a second. I understand it. This is okay, but it's missing something. So I went and I researched it. That was the first article, and that's the basis of the book, Dance with the Channels, which is the channel interactions.
Mm. Very good.
So my journey has been a lot of introspection and being curious and then seeing what works in the clinic.
So, where does that curiosity come from? Has that always been with you, or you like that as a child, or was it something?
Well,
Is
for
it
me,
the way that you perceive the world?
mhm. For me, it's something that's always been present. Um, my, cu- I'm always amazed when people aren't curious.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's if somebody's, and I remember I was at a course, this was, I think, the very first time I saw Dr. Tan in the early 2000s. And we went out for dinner with people and I was talking about, oh, this is great, but what about this? This doesn't, this, and they just looked at me and go, why do you care? It works.
Mm.
And that's when I realized that, yeah, there's certain people who are always curious and certain people who aren't.
Mm.
And I'm one of those people who like to be curious. And it's not about understanding it just to understand it, though. It's about being curious because then you become in relationship to it.
Yeah. I think it's important to know that anyone coming to study with you, it's not about, this is the way and then you do this. It's about
Yeah.
this is the guidelines. Go play, you know.
My goal is like, I know that there's certain people who they say is if you're going to use this system, you have to use this system for 6 months and you treat everything with it, which can be very effective to learn a system.
Mm.
But my approach in everything I teach is this is something that you can integrate into what you're already doing.
Mhm.
It's not an absolute, right? It's not this way or there's nothing. This is, and I'll show you exactly how I work in the clinic, and that's my way of working. I'll talk to you about my clinical reasoning. I'll explain to you how I go through it. I'll present you with tools for you to see that. And then the invitation is for you to take this and make it your own.
Mhm.
It's not for you to take what I do and just redo it.
Yeah. But at least you have the guidelines. If you're going around the wrong
Yeah.
rabbit hole, you can come back to the foundations of
Mhm.
it, start again. I think I just remember so many times needling people,
Mhm.
and then 50% of it would work.
Hmm.
2% of it didn't work. And yet sometimes, as you know, you could use the same points on somebody on a Tuesday. They come back in on the Thursday or the Saturday and they use the same points again and then no effect.
Yeah.
It's that I realized there was a lack of uh, dynamic approach or
Yeah.
a lack of flexibility. And when you're a beginning student, you think, well, in the hospitals I worked with, the standard prescription might be 20 treatments, same points for those first
Yeah.
20. And effectively, after 20 times spleen 6, stomach 36, Ren 4, blah, everybody starts to feel better at some level, right? Energy wise, sleep wise, whatever it is. But we live in the West and they like results and
Hmm.
um
Well, I think there's another part to that also is that our model is different. If you have a hospital model where the person's going to come in 4 times, 5 times a week for the same treatment, it's going to have a different effect. And there is a logic to doing the same effect every day for 20 days and
sure.
then reevaluating.
Yeah.
We don't have that model.
No, we don't have that model.
So we have to find a different way to work.
We do, but I always think, like when I look at that evolution for both of us,
Hmm.
just me, but it was a case of, oh, now I could see why a community doctor that's living 2,000 years ago in a local village
Hmm.
better be bloody good at what they do, you
Yeah.
know, because they relied completely on their reputation, not on
Hmm.
food or money or
Yeah.
gifts. It was literally like, go there because that person gets results. And the responsibility of that. And, I remember, I can't remember who it was. I'm going to say, I think it was an American who'd lived in China for 30 years. And he kind of said, look, that what he'd learned is that there was a lot of people were given the responsibility in China of teaching acupuncture, but a lot of the time they'd actually majored in herbal medicine.
Yeah.
But they couldn't there's like an honor to be giving the role of developing the acupuncture department, right? And you had to show face. You couldn't say, oh, I don't do acupuncture. If you've been assigned, that's your job, you're doing it,
Yeah.
get it done. There was this kind of thing of there was a fear of being cast aside or
Mhm.
worse, right? Um, So yeah, I think there was this case of these people going back, reading the classics, interpreting them pretty much literally, like, and then trying to interpret it through the lens of herbal medicine. I
Hmm.
mean, when I was studying pulse dynamics and pulse flow in college, and then meeting a classical master, it was such worlds apart. Um, and he'd look at the pulses I was learning, and he was like, they don't apply
Yeah.
in the realms of acupuncture. I mean, they apply in terms of diagnosis,
Yeah.
but they don't apply in terms of the response that you'll get from the acupuncture needle compared to the herbal medicine response that you will get.
Hmm.
And the same with tongue diagnosis. So, I mean, actually, physically the
Yeah.
tongue rather than master tongue. But I mean, we read these things where the tongue will change shape over many weeks or months, but we can visibly show with acupuncture you can change the shape, the coating of the tongue,
Hmm.
a matter of minutes, if not seconds. So our body's far more, and as you say, far more dynamic than is sometimes interpreted because there's a lens that's
Hmm.
created and this one particular classical teacher, I remember him taking a book. It's quite a famous book. I think it's called Acupuncture Moxibustion. It's from the 80s. And he just took the book off me and he threw it in his fire. And I said, "What are you doing? This book is 100 it was 150 pounds back then, a lot of money." He's like, "Yeah, keep hands warm, keep feet warm." And it was a lesson of like, I was like, you can't do that. And he's like, relax, I'll buy you another one if you really miss it. But he's like, yeah, it's well, I can't remember. He described it. It's a little bit like a package holiday.
Hmm. Yeah,
You get there, you get the flight, you get accommodation, you might get half board, you get a few little trips thrown in, and then you have a good time, you'll have fun, you'll learn a few things, but it's not the same as going on a trip to Tibet and climbing a mountain, and
yeah,
it's a different journey, is what he was trying to tell me. Um,
yeah. Well, maybe one of the things to think about also is that so it's very interesting is when Chinese medicine was probably written, let's say the 2,500 years ago, the Nanjing, the roles of the different types of practitioner were different. The acupuncturist, because the acupuncturist needs to treat the person over and over again, would probably be in more of an urban setting or close to the Mandarin or the emperor or the important person and treating their entourage. Whereas the herbologist was traveling. They were a person of the countryside who was taking the 150,000-year-old tradition of using plants to treat people. And the acupuncturist was also using that tradition, but in a much smaller area. And then as Chinese culture developed, there was a time when anything that was manual was seen as being less than, and something that was intellectual was valued. So around 1600, and even earlier, we start to see the shift where the herbologist becomes the scholar. And we notice that a lot of acupuncturists was a family run business, handed down from master to apprentice. There's some theories that some of the best acupuncturists in the world were illiterate, they couldn't read because, and it was an oral tradition also. So the way that Chinese medicine evolved and then you had the Cultural Revolution, which really focused on the herbology first, and then because the acupuncture in its core is more esoteric. It's going to talk about subtle energies, not something that we. So a lot of acupuncturists were chased out of China. They went to Vietnam, they went to Taiwan, they went south, they went further and further south, or they stayed very quiet and they removed themselves from the apparatus of academia. Of course, there were some that didn't, but that's the general movement. So then we get to the TCM. Most of the scholars that weren't kicked out or killed by the Cultural Revolution more likely were herbologists. So that's why the TCM books today, when you read a acupuncture book, the way that the symptoms and the indications and all of the way that the point is approached, it's coming from the same approach as they would with a plant.
mhm, mhm.
And then we say, okay, well, this point with this point, there's this plant with this plant.
Sure.
And it's a very useful, I'm not saying it doesn't work, but that's the model that it
Yeah.
is. And there's a lot of other things in acupuncture.
Have you
And,
heard of,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt, have you heard of a man called Wang Li Ting? Golden Needle Wang is his name.
okay.
Um, he's from the school of the spleen and stomach school.
Hmm.
You can buy books about it. I think
Hmm.
I'm going to say blue, if I remember from memory.
Blue Poppy Press, probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably Blue Poppy in the States. There are books like the translations of his work, but uh, very cleverly, uh,
Mhm.
he knew that acupuncture was on its way out in a way. It was kind of being pushed,
Right.
and he was able to reinterpret acupuncture through the points and relate it to the actions of herbs.
Yeah.
And they believe that partly because of this, he saved acupuncture. I'm not saying that he alone,
Hmm.
but it was a way of then being able to
Well, I think he might have had a huge impact in China, but also remember that acupuncture was still continuing in Japan and
Yeah.
Korea and Vietnam. There's schools, there's been schools of acupuncture for years
Mm.
in Korea.
Yes.
So in China, from the Chinese point of view, he probably saved acupuncture in China. But I think we have to remember that there's so many different influences.
Sure.
And so, for example, the Sam approach that I'm
Yeah.
talking about here in this course, that is a Sam was a Korean priest, Korean monk, Confucius monk,
Mm.
who put this together from the Nanjing. Um, so we have other traditions also. If we move a little bit further out of China and we go into some of the places where the people who were, you know,
Mm.
pushed out of China went to, such as Taiwan. Dr. Tan came from Taiwan. Master Tong was living in Taiwan for a long time, and his
Mm.
family, even though they originally from China, they emigrated there. The Japanese systems, and these systems normally they'll base it on the Naijing and the Nanjing, right? They're not going to have all that other influence that's there.
And they seem to use many more variety styles of needle than, say, the standardized sort of, the way we have the nine needles.
Hmm.
You see a lot in Japanese and other systems, they will use the non-puncturing needles,
Yeah,
um, like the Shunny Shin system
yeah.
for the this and the Toyohari, which I remember one of my students going to study that with Stephen Birch, and she was really adamant to go and see it and study it, and I
Mhm.
encouraged her, and she did 10 months, and I'm not entirely sure that she got everything she wanted, but it was still a very interesting journey. Um, and it does feel like, I mean, having spoken to other colleagues, it does feel like Japan, they almost took acupuncture at a certain point of time, and it worked for them, and they kept it within that, and then slightly, I suppose, modernized it according to
Yeah.
what they wanted to use it for. But I know is it Alan Jansen in Australia? He's a big promoter of uh, Japanese style
Yeah.
acupuncture. And I do know in Ireland there isn't that many, but there are people
Mhm.
practicing Japanese style. Um, it's a little bit, I kind of liken it to uh, Android or iPhone. It's like, what
Yeah,
operating system do you resonate with? But I think they still, the roots are still based in, as you say, these pieces of work.
yeah,
And I think we forget that probably most of us are practicing a very small snapshot, or if not, it's a bit like when you used to defrag your computer. Remember, you had to defrag the hard drive. It's like little slices in time being brought together and collated to make something workable and usable. And we do have to. I know we talked about this, that we do need to still honor the roots. We don't have to be adamant about this is the way.
yeah,
Um, but we do need to pay a lot of respect to the effort. Like, I mean, the amount of effort. You're talking people who probably studied for 40 years, one system, to
yeah,
get it honed, and then obviously, like any system, it's not going to work for everyone. I mean, I've studied 5 styles of martial arts, and I can tell you, not one of them is flawless. All of them have flaws. Um, but we do
yeah.
have to honor the effort and the work that's gone in. I mean,
Yeah.
in between
There's
our,
another thing that's also
oh,
quite interesting.
say again.
So I was going to say, there's another thing that's interesting about the Japanese systems is from around the 16th century. Um, they had to be able to do uh, acupuncture, you had to have a license. And the person who had the acupuncture license wasn't allowed to have the moxa license. And the person who had the moxa license wasn't allowed to have the cupping license. So what you end up finding in Japan is each modality has to find ways to treat much more than that specific, than that indication that we find in Chinese medicine. Now, this is a point that I often get in conflict with some people, is where they say is you can't, there's some things you can't treat without herbs, right? That's a common thing at the moment. I would say you can treat everything without herbs. Sometimes herbs might be the best modality for it, but that doesn't mean it's the only way that you can, blood deficiency. It's not only through herbs can you build blood,
Mm,
right? And it's not only through this can you do that.
mm,
Because, and the Japanese model shows us is that, with moxa, they found ways to tonify yin,
mm,
which from a Chinese medicine point of view, from coming from mainland China, you're like, no, if you're putting heat, you're going to be tonifying the yang, you're not going to be tonifying the yin. So that's just also a way of us seeing is that to open up our horizons to all the different possibilities that are out there
yeah,
and to not be stuck in, one way.
yeah, very good. Yeah, I mean, I studied herbs quite extensively over many years, different
Yeah.
types, and I practice one system, it works for me, but um, there is one thing I learned is, even in herbal medicine, you have the energetic style, which is working with the energetic properties of a plant. So you then have what I call the pharmo sort of phyto pharmaceutical method. So, like ephedra, the herb ephedra, right?
Hmm.
Marijuana was used for colds, and opening the chest, and actually ephedra is used in cold remedies,
Yeah.
so it's like there is this pharmaceutical. I'm not going to say the word pharmaceutical, but there's the pharmacopoeia effect, a materia medica effect, if you like, and then also there is some of the herbs are poisonous. They're designed to be slightly poisonous,
Hmm.
a very low dose to trigger a response. So there's this almost semi kind of homeopathic methodology to it.
Hmm.
And so again, herbs in China it's working at multiple levels, and a lot of herbalists, it takes them a long time to
Yeah.
get to that. It takes them more years than an acupuncturist. And I think sometimes that's why in China when I was working there was like the herbal medicine doctors was like seen as like because not because it was any better, it's because I think when I was there they could treat a hell of a lot more people because literally they would sit 2 or 3 days in their office, pulse
Hmm.
on, write the prescription, come back in 2 weeks, and it's like you boom,
Yeah.
boom, 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 boom. Physically with acupuncture, you still need the people in the hospital.
Yeah.
You need a much bigger space. You might have in some of the rooms I worked in, there'd be 40 or 50 people in one room.
Hmm.
Uh, Moxa then added that added effect of Moxa, and I remember towards the end of my visits, they still hadn't had the extractor systems that they have now, and so a lot of doctors were getting sick from Moxa headaches because they were constantly inhaling this moxibustion smoke, which you can imagine is not great for you. And then with the tween eye departments, it varied. It varied according to the hospital.
Yeah.
Some hospitals valued tween eye and they promoted and they pushed tween eye, and others
No.
it was like you got very fast results, but in a way it was a slower method because you needed people to be in 3 or 4 times a week,
Yeah.
20 minutes at a time. You needed traction machines and you needed herbal baths and all these things. And there was a lot more laundry, a
Hmm.
lot
Yeah.
more laundry in those departments. So there was a cost involved. And I did notice towards the end of my visits, um, the advent of more and more machinery, more and more sort of modern interventions coming in to speed up the process. But I think what I see in Ireland at the moment is we're kind of at this cusp of transformation of possibly one, two, or possibly three associations coming together to
Oh,
form
great.
one governing body with a bit more push. And I think possibly that is because there's a few of us that want to push for a deeper registration and a
Yeah.
far more standardization. And that's a double-edged sword, of course.
Mhm.
It brings a huge benefits from a financial perspective to some practitioners because it allows us to not have to charge VAT to our patients.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other side of it is guaranteed, like guaranteed that you will come to Jonathan Shubs twice a year because you get your CPD points. I mean, our associations are pretty good at geeing us up to get us to
Right.
study. I mean, it's getting better, and you can see they're pushing harder. And people push back and go, oh, but I get it. I get they want the standard to be good. And I always thought, and this is no disrespect to any of the associations, but I think sometimes we have a mutual friend, David Boyle, as an example, right, David? And he always looked outside of Ireland, and I have a couple of other colleagues that just always looked outside of Ireland for training, not because
Yeah.
of anything other than curiosity,
Yeah.
Um, and then I got to a point where there was all these people I wanted to study with, and there was no way I was going to travel to six places in a year. So I bring them to us. So that's part of the reason why I wanted you here in Ireland. Just
Mhm.
basically selfishness, really, just to get you here. But I want people to know that they're watching this podcast. It's not, yeah, of course, it's blatant. I don't mind. I don't have a qualms in blatantly, but it's not because I mean, this is not a lot of money, and the value that it gives you, it's worth it. But it's not just it's so they can meet you, they can
Mhm.
not only learn from you, but they can talk to someone who, I mean, you're treating all kinds of unusual things that I presume we, I feel that a lot of practitioners Ireland are moving kind of, you can feel them moving into that realm of
Yeah.
trauma work. Uh, I don't know what you would call it. I don't want to give it a name, but it's almost as you would say, not necessarily spiritual or shamanic, but it's
I
working on
would,
the spirit
the
level.
way that I talk about it is it's soul work.
Yeah.
You're working on the soul level.
Mhm. Yeah. 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 And this kind of, decisive, practical understanding helps strengthen the effect of your treatment. And one thing I learned doing Qigong was there's a lot of people I know in Ireland that are really good at Qigong and they're just naturally talented. They can absorb, they can transmit, they can heal, but they have absolutely no idea why or how.
Well,
And I always said, like, if you could take a martial artist who's very talented and then explain to them why it works, why this works, or why the Qigong works, it helps. I don't think it takes away, it enhances like when you have a deeper understanding of the mechanisms, of course, everything's going to be better.
well, I would actually put it into context like this is the fact or when you can understand underlying mechanisms and you have a grasp on the general ideas and how they interact and you can be more free to be present with the patient and not have an idea of where it needs to go, but to respond to the moment. And that's something that I find both in my practice of talk therapy and soul work with compassionate inquiry and in the treatment room for acupuncture is until I say, okay, now it's time to interact. I have, even when I'm taking a whole case history, looking at all these different problems, I'm not thinking, what am I going to do? I'm just sitting with it. And then it's at the moment that action is being asked of me, the fact that I can rely on all that knowledge, I can respond to the moment and to the client, the person that's there, as opposed to thinking
Mm,
digestive problems, IBS, fire in the large intestine, clear fire in the large intestine. What are the points for that?
Mhm.
Now, it might turn out that I'll get to the same point, and that sometimes happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that's the real advantage of, or for me, that's what I find really useful about having this, having the ability to understand underlying mechanisms that allows you to be more present in your treatments.
Mm.
And sometimes things will come and you don't understand them, but you'll do them because you trust in your knowledge and in the moment. And then you can go on a journey and you start to research them and you start to see a whole new realm of things. Um, so I think that's where it becomes really useful,
Mm.
is that allows you to be more, I don't think when I'm in the clinic. That I know that sounds strange because a lot of people, even you, think I'm always thinking and analyzing.
Yeah, well, I think this is the first interview me and you've done in a while, the first podcast. And
Hmm.
like if you look back at the previous ones, you can see that you have changed.
Yeah, yeah,
I can see that, and I'm sure you've seen that I've evolved too.
of
And I think,
course.
you know, uh, partly that's that curiosity point and having that flexible mindset. I mean, when you first met me, I was very much everything has to go in a box.
Yes,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? That goes in the box over
mhm,
there. Between that goes over here. Acupuncture,
yeah.
qigong goes here, and just from hanging out with you and talking to you and just interacting, and then us playing together with the qigong, and then you're looking at me going, hang on a minute. And then I'm doing Qigong, and then you're saying, well, that Qigong's going to work because it's like that. And I'm laughing because in my mind, I'm going, no, he's putting my Qigong in a box. So we both, it's that
Yeah,
interaction of, you've
yeah,
helped me get out of my box or get out of the
yeah,
boxes. And then when I go into a place where there's no box, which is my Qigong, you're like, no, that goes into it's very, but that's the yin yang dynamic
yeah.
that is important in that we have to share with one another.
But just to give a Qigong example, so this afternoon I was in the forest. It's a place that I go to. I try to get there at least once a week to spend time there, and I do some Qigong. I do some of the Qigong that we've worked on together. And after I had done my Qigong, I was Qigong walking. It's something I do is where I go in a Qigong state and I walk around. I was walking around a tree. I was looking at the tree. And because I was in this trance state of Qigong, I started to notice things in the tree. And as I looked really carefully, I saw this beautiful silver, may it couldn't have been bigger than this. I
mm,
don't know if you can see it there. Silver worm in between the bark. It looked like a seahorse. Or look, and that is being present with the Qigong.
mhm,
And that's the type of thing that I try to transmit when we're doing acupuncture also,
mhm,
is to be able to just slow it down and all of a sudden you'll notice that one thing.
mhm.
I've never seen it before. I've never seen that worm that looked so silvery, looked almost like a snake in a tree. It was
Yeah,
so yeah, I just wanted to give
yeah,
that idea.
that's super interesting because obviously we've talked about the journey to qigong for me, but all those things were were are normal
Yeah.
for me is normal. And I don't maybe talk about it so much anymore because it's just like it's just normal. Uh,
Hmm.
but it's amazing. Like so, I've started working on a chakra balancing. So it's a merging of ideas,
Hmm.
and I'm really enjoying it. I'm getting a lot of fun out of it. But it does, like today we were out on this golf course playing foot golf with my family, which we have this thing called forced family fun day. So we forced gotta have fun. But it's a really good way of like no matter where you're at, whether you don't want to do it or you do want to do it, it doesn't matter. We all meet each other on the same.
Yeah.
It was the first time we've ever done an activity where we were all pretty much equal.
Uh,
We were all equal at this sport, or this activity. But I'd been training in this system in the morning, so and it just there was like this awareness of the environment and the course and autumn and the nature, and I was seeing things in the way the land was carved and just following that the way the grass was. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm wondering, do the kids, does my wife have that same perception as me? Or is it the work, or is it the state or the awareness point that I'm in?
Yeah.
Um, and I don't go up to them and go, could you see the dragon inside
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
course and the way it snaked around into the number 18 hole, um, and it's like, you think when people hallucinate and they have maybe psychedelic experiences, is it really that are they really hallucinating? Are they actually seeing things that are patterns, if you like, and then their brain is interpreting it as an image? Um, Maybe that's kind of overthinking it, but yeah, it's nice to have
Yeah.
that, and I've had those experiences, especially with
Mhm.
with forestry,
Yeah.
where the trees have leaned towards me and moved
Yeah.
away, and you're wondering, oh, what's going on, but really it's
Well,
just your field of awareness is different.
well, during our rites of passage, I think that's the state we were in the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it was just that was normal for us for those,
Yeah.
48 hours. There was just like, yeah. And I
Mhm.
think everybody, it's quite interesting when I've done group work, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, is you can have a shared theme.
Yeah.
You may all have slight nuances,
Hmm.
all in a shared field of
Yeah.
consciousness. Um, and I do remember just before we finished this podcast, there's a Lee Yuan saying to me, that the healing starts long before those needles even get to the patient's body. And it's being aware of
Hmm.
that almost the needles are the anchor,
Yeah.
you know, uh, that you've everything is set in that way. And I mean, when I look at the treatment you gave me, the two of you just stepped back completely. It was the treatment was so powerful. We were just like, yeah, we're leaving the room now. Whereas before, you'd have this the suit and the tie acupuncturist who like puts the needles in and leaves. But
Yeah.
it's not leaving because they're just leaving. Whereas you were
Yeah.
like, oh, like, we better go.
Yeah. You
It's
needed your
like
space to
let everything
experience that.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was very much that feeling of, yeah, it's better if we just get the hell out of here while this alchemical change occurs. And I think that was the important thing is so yeah, look, let's finish up and let's maybe
Yeah.
give some words of wisdom to the to potential people who would like to come. It's going to be in November. I think
Hmm.
we decided was it 15th and 16th of November.
I'll bring up the dates just to make
Yeah, we can
sure.
put the link below. I've
Perfect.
actually already got signups, which is great news.
Yeah.
So um
Yes, it's the 15th of six and 16th of November in Cork.
November. Yeah, so we're going to be in Cork City in Brew Columbanus, which is near Wilton in Cork. And yeah, it's interesting of people signing up that I've never met, which is great. It's
Yeah.
great. It means we have different people coming than normal. And we'll be there for 2 days.
Hmm.
Yeah, I say come hydrated, come prepared, and yeah, be blown away, prepared to be blown away. And is there anything you want to share with potential people who may be on the fence, not quite sure, is it for them or not?
What I would say is a lot of people think, oh, I studied five elements, I know five elements, or I've studied SAM, I know SAM. And that's true. You do know the five elements, you have studied other things. And beyond just the learning process of what I can offer you, one of the things we forget is spending 2 days being bathed in this work with other people who are also curious. The sharing and the learning, it's not just the information I'm presenting. It's everybody who's there. And
Yeah.
it's something that I'm sure everybody who comes to these courses, any course, knows this. And that, yeah, I think that would be what I would remind people of is that we end up being in our clinic, in our own world, we get stuck in, and it's important to step back and remember that we're part of an acupuncture community and we can all work together. And it's in meeting and being with each other
Yeah.
that that we evolve and
Yeah.
we learn.
I think that's a huge message, and I do believe for the first time, I mean, I've lived in Ireland 28 years this year, and it's the first time it's really seeing acupuncture, like really sharing of information and people pulling together. Like there's some fantastic posts today where people saying, I'm in Dublin, I need help with my own back and neck and shoulders, and can you help? And people just,
Yeah.
supporting each other, not just supporting the patients, but supporting each other within the community. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'd just say, come along. It's like 2 days. It's like a mini retreat. You literally get to hang out with yourself,
Maybe
and
it's another thing I would also like to say is because we're talking about people who might have already studied things. Even if you
yeah,
haven't studied, if you're saying, oh, I don't know anything about five elements, I don't know anything about SAM, the course is still, I always start from the ground up, so it's accessible to you. And as you said before, this is the one course that even kinesiologists or other health professionals, the one thing that we do ask is that you have an understanding of the channel placements and the points,
yeah,
right? Once you have those basic understandings, so
yeah,
if you're an acupuncturist and you want to bring along your kinesiologist friend, your shiatsu friend,
yeah,
this is the course that is accessible to all of them.
for sure. And we had kinesiologists on the course,
Yeah.
and really worked.
Yeah.
And again, curiosity,
Hmm.
and they found a way to make it work. And we could go back and retest and
Yeah.
re-diagnose and confirm, and the person lying on the bench could confirm. So,
Exactly.
like, the system works regardless. It's just having that open mind and that bravery not to be. I mean, acupuncturists. Yeah, we're a little bit weird, but we're pretty much normal. We're not
Compared to what?
compared to what exactly? How do you define normal? But anyway, I'm going to say thank you for this. I will leave links below. Obviously, this will go onto Cup of Cheap Podcast, YouTube. We'll put in the links to book for the course,
Yeah.
2 days.
Great.
Links to Jonathan's books. You can get them through Singing Dragon.
Hmm.
And yeah, I look forward to let's get the ball rolling again. It feels like it's been a while, and I can tell that lots of transformations. So I'm looking forward to the Jonathan Shubs 3.0 teaching style. I think it's going to be fun, and I think people are going to enjoy it. That's the thing. Come and have fun.
Yes.
Questions. What I like about Jonathan, if he doesn't know, he goes, I don't know. You go try. I don't know. He's got
Yeah.
the, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Go try it. And that's the thing. It's not like about being the expert. It's about
Hmm.
understanding really, really well how the system interacts with the human body. And then if you have an idea, run with it and try
Yeah.
it. You know, there's
Hmm.
there's 8 billion of us on the planet, allegedly, so plenty of people to experiment on.
Exactly.
Thanks very much, Jonathan, and
Wonderful.
we'll see you in November.
Yes. Great.